Hi guys, so I'm going to do another one of those quick build videos, and I found this in a game, and it's a very cool kind of like glowing lantern. In the game itself it actually pulsates a little bit, so when I'm making this I'm going to make the geometry, and then I'm probably going to do a quick emissive map just to show you how they've actually done it, because it's very simple. They would have made the emissive map so it looks like it glows, and then they would have probably interpolated the light so it kind of like fades in and out in like a ramp, which is very cool, very easy to do. So I've got this. I'm going to save out this image and then bring it into my scene. Or in fact, yeah, I'll bring it into the scene so we can keep an eye on it. I'll just take one side of it. So I won't be speeding up this video, or I hope I won't be speeding up this video. But I'll try to do as little talking as I can and just kind of explain what I'm doing and not how I'm, well, explain how I'm doing things and not what I'm doing. Long-term left. There we are. So I've got some strong coffee, I've got some nice music in my headphones, and let's kick off. So obviously straight away I'm going to make a project. I'm going to call this rope lantern. Cool. And let's just make sure that Maya's definitely looking at it. So let's redirect to rope lantern. Cool. So now I'm going to dump that lantern reference in my source images folder. So let's find it. I need to really clean up my desktop because it's full of rubbish. There you go. So let's copy that into my source images folder. There we go, rope lantern, and I'm going to put that just like I did with the candlestick. I'm going to put that inside the scene in my perspective camera and just knock it off to the side. That's my thing. So let's size it down a little bit and offset it to the side like that. Okay, cool. So that's what I'm going to make. So let's kick off. What I have noticed is this object has 7 edges going, 7 of these little rope things going across the side, going down. Now, if I was doing this for a production, if my boss come up to me and said it has to be 7 edges going down, I'd have to do that. But because I want this video to not go, take a long time to make, I'm gonna up that to 8, or maybe no, I'll take it down to 6, so that we've got these nice broad glowing sections. It's perfectly doable doing it in 7. It's just I've got to do a lot more complex modeling, a little bit more complex modeling, because it's very hard to get an even surface and make it 6 and then make sure every one of those faces works. So I'm just going to do it 7. Sorry. So I'm just going to do it at 6 so that I can just make it quite easily for you guys. It's going to look the same anyway. So first thing I'm going to do is just do the spherical section. I've noticed that there's 3 ropes going down the sides. There's one at the very bottom, going from top to bottom. There's one at the very bottom where it sits, which is, I think in the game there's like a little wooden plate as well where it sits on. There's one around there and there's one there, as well as the top knot. So what I'm going to do first is just do this sphere and then just do the things going down the sides like that, which is quite easy. So what I'm going to do first is make my sphere, make sure it's in the middle of the world. So I'm just going to 0 out, translate X and translate Z like that, and then I'm going to bring this down because this is naturally 20 by 20, and for me that's a little bit too high. I have noticed that this is really low poly. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5 divisions going down and only about 12 divisions going round. So I'm actually going to change it to 12 going round because I think that's enough. But I'm going to also leave it to 12 going down. So I've got 12 around, 12 down. That'll give me a nice appearance of a smooth edge when I start to texture this. So what I'm going to do first is tackle these edges, and how I'm going to do that is actually delete this top and bottom area going around. So delete that and delete that, because they will be deleted anyway, or moved, I'll be messing around with them anyway. And now I'm going to go around and add my divisions in for these little strips. And how I'm going to do that, in this case anyway, is use the multi-cut tool up here. So inside our top toolkit we've got this little scalpel and 3 dots. This is a multi-cut tool, so I can actually physically go in and add things like that, which then turns into a wire. Or if I hold control, I can actually, it'll show me that I can add an entire loop there, so I can just go around and, which you shouldn't, I mean, you can see me clicking around doing that like that. This tool shouldn't be used to just add edges in where you think they should be added in. You need to really consider how you're adding these edges in, which is what I'm going to be doing. And also, if you hold control and then hold shift, it will snap to 10% increments, which is what I want, because I'm going to try and bring mine to about 20% away. So that's 10% away from the edge, and that's 20% there. So I'm going to go around and just add 20% on every other edge like that. So I'm cutting on this edge, and then I'm missing one, and then I'm cutting on this edge, and then I'm missing one. And I'm holding shift while I do that, just so I can get the nice 20%, making sure that every cut I make is at 20%. That. Cool. Awesome. So that's my 6 sections going around, which I'm actually going to extrude my rope from. However, the rope needs to, like, for me being a bit of a perfectionist, the rope needs to be straight. You can see here the rope is one consistent length or width going around, but on mine, because it's wider around the equator of the sphere and thinner around the top, around the pole, I want it to be either the thickness here or the thinness here, going the entire length, and I want it actually to be the thin. I want the entire edge to be this wide going all the way down. So I've got to do a little bit of jiggery pokery with it, but it's not too hard at all. What I'm going to do is basically condense all these vertex together using this as my anchor point. And I'm going to actually be rotating around my object and doing that each time. Now, what happens if I actually do that? So I'll D and V to that vertex there, and I will, if you just watch this area here, if I just scale in, you can see how it kind of changes. This becomes sharper. I'll lose that sort of line here. I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is go up to my modeling toolkit up here, and then I'm going to turn on, in this option here, transform constraint, I'm going to turn on edge slide. And if I do this now, what you'll see is these edges will just literally slide along that edge, and I won't lose any definition to this curve. So I can do that for each one of these, making sure that I anchor my geometry there, so you can see there. So besides this transform constraint, this process is using the exact same tools we've used before. So I'm holding D so I can move my manipulator, and V so I can snap it to a vertex, V for vertex, and I can just use a scale tool and drag it in. If I drag away from the edge, it goes out like that, and if I drag in, it'll start to line up. So I'm just lining up all these vertex like that, so nice and straight. And I'm going to do that for the entire object. So I'm going to hold J and rotate it around so it's nice and straight. So I've rotated my object around while holding J, so I've moved it, if I move that away, I've moved it 60 degrees. So now these points are all lined up, so I can do all these at the same time, going up. Like that, you can see I've got these guys and these guys, because they're going to be lined up against the same vertex. And I'm going to scale in. I grab these ones, And I'll scale it like that. And I'll rotate around one more time. So I've got, where are you? There you go. So I've got these guys who are still kind of fluted off a little bit, flaring off. And I'll do the same thing. So I'll D and V them into a vertex. So I'm using this vertex as a point in which to align all these vertex. So dish, and then careful, just only grab that center circle and align like that. Good. And then I can zero out that rotation. Cool. So now I've got these faces going all the way around, which I can now extrude out my rope, which I'm going to do. So I can go around, select all these faces, oh, my selection's been a bit funky. There we go. Advice to everyone is just be careful when you're clicking. You see there I messed up a few times because I was rushing my clicking because I don't want this video to be too long. But always, take your time when you're selecting stuff so you don't mess anything up. So with them strip sections selected, I'm going to hit my extrude tool and then just use my thickness. So I can close this modeling toolkit. Use my thickness control just to bring it off a little bit. Like that. So now we've got, oh, maybe that's a little bit too much. Change that to maybe 0.3, 0.2, yeah, 0.2. That's better. And if I wanted to, I could use the offset just to give myself a little bit of kind of a little bit of a curve to this extrusion. Maybe that's a little bit too much. 0.15. There we go. So it's not such a right angle. I'm getting a little bit of a curve to this extrusion to help me kind of get this rope feeling. Cool. Right. So that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to go around and delete these faces here. Or in fact, do I leave them? For now, I'll leave them. I'll leave them for now. And before I do a save, what I'm going to do, just like I did with the candle, I'm going to soften all the edges and then go around and harden the edges that I just want to make a point of. I might do this, from time to time when I'm modeling, just to help me see the object more finalized while I'm modeling it. Helps me just not get too, not bored, but just helps me get a little bit more excited about the prospect of the finished piece. So then I'm going to go around, mesh display, harden edge. Cool. So I'm also noticing that this isn't a perfect sphere. I will get that to be a perfect sphere by the end. It's just right now I'm just going to keep it, well, I'll elongate it or whatever I need to change later on. I'm just trying to get the big broad strokes of the object in there. So now I'm going to do the bottom where I've got this torus going around, or this rope that goes around the very bottom of it, and it was a 12-sided sphere, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so it's a 12-sided sphere. So what I'm going to do is make a torus with 12 divisions. And what a torus is just a donut shape. So it's the 6th one along on the bar. And if I click and drag out, you can see there that this is a torus. So it's just a donut shape. And it's got the same properties that you can change as anything else. You can change the radius, change the section radius, twist, the subdivision, height subdivision. So I'm going to make that pretty low poly. Just give that maybe an 8. and make sure it's 12 going around. There you go. So I'm actually going to put this in position, size it up about the right size, and then actually duplicate it and move it into the top. So I'm going to scale it down, move it into place, go in and change the radius height, the section radius, so to say, because maybe that was a little bit too thin then, because this is maybe a rope which is bound around the bottom. So that's alright. So I'll scale it up, bring it up there, like that. Looking pretty good. Cool. So now with them in position, I can try and get these actually physically onto my object. So this does take a little bit of like forward thinking, because obviously we've got these edges coming down for our rope, and we need to connect everything to this torus at the very bottom and this torus at the very top. So I'm going to have to think, how am I going to do this? In fact, what I'm going to do is also duplicate this off and just put it to position for my main rope going around there, like that. Cool. So I'll put that into position later on. So yeah, these edges here are going to need to come into here without making too much mess, or without creating an n-gon. And remember, an n-gon is a shape with more than 4 sides, and we really want to avoid those. They aren't good geometry for us to use. Triangles are fine as long as it's a static object, so this will be okay because it's not going to bend or morph. Organic objects, you want to avoid triangles, just because if it's animated, that triangle might affect the way the geometry or the texture deforms, which is bad news. So what I'm actually thinking about doing, which I will actually do, is I'm going to actually delete 3/4 of this object already. So I'm going to delete all this. And you might be asking yourself, Dave, why have you done that? Because it's the same divisions going around. It's a very equal division. I can basically mirror it over. Once I've completed this little connection point here, I can mirror it over and basically just I can mirror this section over, so I'm still having this rope here, and then I can mirror this section over, so that I'm getting both halves back. So let's get rid of that. And this is where, you know, those of you who are very new to modeling might be thinking, oh god, what do I do? And it's fine, it's fine. So what I'm going to do is delete the faces that were made when we first did this extrusion from the rope. So we made these faces here. So I'm actually going to delete those, get rid of them, and I'm going to grab the vertex from my object, and then I'm not going to weld them, I'm just going to snap them into place at first. So I'm going to grab this one and just snap it to, oh, have I still got edge constraint? Yes, so I've still got transform constraint turned on, so make sure I turn that off. So I'm going to snap these vertex to the corners of my rope there, and this one I'm going to leave it as is in a minute because I've got to kind of mess with that. I will flatten that out, however, like that. So one thing I should say as well, I get that people have done modelling in college, and some people might think there's only one way of modelling, but this way that I'm doing is no way the only way of modelling. And whatever person's way of modelling is, that's their way of modelling, that's what they've learned. But I would say just be receptive about other modelling methods, because someone might have a method that might answer a lot of questions that you've struggled with in the past. So let's kind of align that up here. So I'm just kind of trying to get stuff into a general shape position before I do the next step. Because what I'm going to do next is start to merge a lot of these weird shapes in. Right, okay. So there's some points which definitely merge. So this corner definitely merges with that corner perfectly, and this one to there perfectly, which is great. What I'm having to do now is fix these areas here, where my rope is entering this area, which I can't physically connect together because I'm going to be creating n-gons. So what I'm going to be doing is making a shape in this torus at the very bottom, or this rope section, to then fit this section in. And that's where I'm going to use that multi-cut tool again. So what I'm going to do, just think how to do this, is I'm going to create a cut somewhere as close as I can get it to this corner here, where my rope comes down and meets the torus. I'm going to make a point somewhere close to there. I'm going to make one somewhere close to it there. And then I'm going to put one somewhere close to it there. So I'm creating a shape to put that, to connect that rope to. I'm going to click OK, or click Enter to complete that tool. Now that's created a quad interior in the interior, which I'm going to delete later on. But then it's giving me this n-gon up here that I need to fix. So going to, there's a couple of different ways I can do this. And I'm actually going to do it like this, yeah. I'm going to bring from this corner, I'm going to bring an edge all the way up to this corner here. So that's giving me a quad here and a quad here. So it's giving me a four-sided shape, and I've lost that n-gon. Now, like I said before, this isn't a bad shape because this object will probably never bend or morph or anything like that. So I'm okay using these sort of shapes. If I was to subdivide this, it might have issues. Yeah, we've got some issues there. So in the interest of trying to make this as nice as possible, I'll have another go at creating that edge. And I will just bring that down there like that. Round like that. So what I'm doing here is making a group of quads which go around the edges, which may be a little bit messy, or like have some like what you might deem as superfluous edges on there. But if you're looking to get everything nice and quadded, you could probably do something like that, because we want to try and maintain as many quads as possible. So I'm going to just do that again. Oh, where's my stuff? Okay. So I'll actually complete this thing I'm doing, and then just see how that, if I was to subdivide it, let's see how that would subdivide. So I'm actually going to redo this section because I just eyeballed in the edge position. So some of you might be looking at this going like, Dave, I don't understand what you're doing. I'm just experimenting with how to create this object, because again, there's not one way of modeling. If you've seen like the guys from Bungie or the guys from Guerrilla Games or anything like that, you see how they're modeling. That's not the only way of doing stuff. There are other ways of doing stuff, and they work like that because they've developed that way of working for themselves to either speed up their own process, or maybe it's just the way they kind of worked out how to model. So this is me just experimenting and trying out, not being afraid of just making a bit of a mess at first so I can then fix it up. But I'm just trying to experiment with how I can just get everything looking or working a bit nicer. So if I was to subdivide that now, that'd give me a much nicer. Oops, there's something. Ah, that's fine. Because one thing with optimizing geometry is sometimes it can actually work against you when you subdivide it. So what I could actually do here is maybe bring these edges into triangles, because I'm losing a bit of that curvature of the object, of the objet. So I said this is going to be a quick video, but this has gone into me just experimenting with stuff. So when I've gone past this section, it'll probably speed up a lot more, because I'm just trying to figure out how I want to, or how I feel best about doing this section. So if I just turn triangles there, and if I subdivide that, it gives us a really nasty setup here, which I don't like. So I'm going to leave it like that anyway. I'm going to leave it as these triangles going down, because I'm not actually going to subdivide this object anyway. It's just me kind of experimenting. So I'm actually going to connect it to my object now. So these faces inside, I'm going to take away. And what I can do as well is get rid of this top torus and just move this up. So duplicate it, move it up, and then I'm going to actually flip it. So I'm going to freeze all the transformation, because over here I've still got translate information and my scale. So I've actually changed the scale, so all this is off. So I'm going to actually freeze this transformation so everything gets zeroed out. Oh, our scale is set to 1 again. And I'm going to -1 in scale, which basically flips my object upside down. So with that, I can just move everything into place. And this is a great thing about working on objects that are symmetrical at first, and then you can make them asymmetrical later on, is I can quickly just get a piece of geometry in there, get it working, and then I'm actually going to combine these two pieces and then merge them. So I'm grabbing these two pieces and merge. And merge. Why are we merging? These two. And merge. There we go. Don't know why that wasn't working. So if you've got two vertex selected, only two vertex selected, and you click merge or weld, it'll weld them both together in kind of like the middle distance between the two points. So I can just go around and quickly just merge those, and then I can, obviously I need to do the interior section, like where the rope meets the geometry. And boom, there we go. So remember that I'm pressing G to repeat the last tool, and my last tool is weld, so I'm just doing that again. So some people might be looking at this going like, Dave, that's well confusing. How have you figured out how to do that? Or you've just rushed over it. I don't. What? Just go back, rewatch the video, and a lot of it's just down to the fact that I've been doing this for a very, very long time, and I've kind of worked out these methods of doing stuff, and I've not been afraid to just experiment with stuff and you know, make mistakes and try and get stuff looking cool, and experimenting with different methods and different tools, and breaking down the object into really manageable chunks instead of trying, like it's what I'm doing here, instead of trying to do the entire object at one time. I'm just breaking it into a quarter. I'm working on quarter because I know that even if it's going to be asymmetrical, I can keep it symmetrical and get it all working, get it all complete until the point that I have to make it asymmetrical, and then by that point everything's already been made and in place, and I can then go and do that function. So I'm going to make this big rope section fit as well, but I'm actually going to change the division because it's a bigger piece of geometry. Oh, Mai's thinking. My erase. There we go. It's a bigger piece of geometry, so I'm gonna give it more divisions going round. but not across. So I've done something where I can't actually access the like changing the subdivision levels and stuff. So what I'm going to do is still quarter it. So take off quarter, so I'm only dealing with the section that's touching my object here. But I'm going to subdivide this section, and I can do that by obviously clicking my subdivision here. So I've been given more edges going around, so it's softer, but I don't want these edges here. So let's see how that looks once I... In fact, no, I'll leave it like that. I'm not going to overcomplicate stuff. I'll leave it like this. So I'm having a look at my object. I've subdivided it and I'm having a look around. I'm seeing what I can actually do to connect this to the object. And what I'm feeling at the minute is I can see that these points here on the main object and these points here on this are very close together. So I could just weld certain sections together. Like here, I could weld sections like this together. And then adding divisions going around, I can weld this section. So I'm basically going to make a... Well, I'll explain it. Oops, I'll explain it while I'm doing it. So I'm going to get my multi-cut tool again, and I'm going to, on this rope section going around, I'm going to add a division. Oops. So holding Control, I'm going to add a division that goes to as close to the point where these two objects meet as possible. And I'm going to do the same thing here. There we go. So I can delete this interior section all the way around. So the bit which is then going inside the vessel I can get rid of. And now it's the sections here where the ropes are. I'm going to have to think about, how am I going to do that? And that looks pretty simple to me. I can get the multi-cut tool again, and I'm going to make another triangle here, just like I've done where I've connected the rope to the vessel up here and made a triangle. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So get my tool, bring it to as close to the edge as I can there, and then there, like that. And then do the same thing here. So bring it across. Oh, yeah. Oh, I think I might. Nope, that's fine. There we go. So bring across there, bring it across to there, and bring it across there, and then back. There we go. So that looks good. So on the inside, I've got these quads I can now get rid of. So remember that any faces that are on the interior of something like this can be rid of. You should get rid of them. And now on the main vessel, I have to make the corresponding cuts that will weld onto this rope. And I don't have to make any triangles. Oh, I forgot to do the bottom. I don't have to make any triangles on the main vessel because I've made all that information on the... Why isn't it? There we go. Oh, I think Maya's throwing a little bit of a hissy fit at me. It is, I believe. Yep. Okay, so... Right, okay. So I'm going to have to save... So I'm going to have to save and close Maya, then reopen it. So I'm having a bit of a graphical issue. So let's do a save. I should have been doing saves anyway. You know, lantern 01. And I'll actually explain what's going on here because some of you might actually have this. In object mode, select when I've got my object selected in object mode. In the channel box, I should have all that information like translate, rotate, scale, any other information, the history. But you can see here there's nothing inside this box. Also, when I go to use a tool, this entire object should turn blue and you should see a red dot kind of traveling across the surface. It doesn't change up until I click on it and then move the camera, then it kind of comes back. But I'm still losing all this information. So I'm going to close Maya, open it back up, and carry on. That's something, you know, if it does anything like that, it's not the end of the world. All you have to do is save, close, reopen, and 99% of the time it fixes any issues. So before I reopen this project, I want to tell Maya what project I want, because I want that image to reappear. Back again, sorry, the coffee's giving me burps. I want that image to reappear. If I just open it straight from the desktop or whatever, sometimes that image plane of my reference won't appear. I'll just get this purple box. So I'm going to set project and find that project again, which is Rope Lantern. Set. So now I can go in, File, Open Scene, Lantern 1. Hey, so now my tools will work again. And I might have to do this a couple of times. So now, hey, see the tools are working. And if I go to the option, so you can see all our information's there, which is great. So yeah, again the multi-cut tool, and I'm going to hold Control and add those divisions in again. So I'm just going to add one in there, and what I'm doing is lining up with where this torus for the rope I've made is lining up with the actual body. So I'm going to go in there, line that up, and then do the same for down here. So line that up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, getting it as close as you can is best. Now before I actually delete this interior, I want to slide these edges up so they meet with this section here. And I'm going to do that using the edge slide like I did before. So in my modeling toolkit, there, transform constraint, edge slide, and I'm going to slide that up, and then just grab that vertex so it looks a little bit low and do that, and then do the same thing down here, slide that down. Oh, I still need to add the triangles, or like the way I'm going to affix it to the body. I'm still going to have to do this down here. That's what I couldn't do last time. So let me just sort out this stuff around here now. So I'm moving around the model constantly. I'm getting all the different vantage points. I'm having to go inside the geometry here because I can't see properly what's going on. There we go. Now, some of you might also be saying, Dave, why aren't you using a Boolean to do this? Because a Boolean, some people might like using Booleans, and that's fine. I find Booleans make more mess than they really kind of fix, because you've got to go in there, and once you've done it, you'll be creating loads of n-gons that you've got to fix later on, and it's just a bad scene, and I get quite stressed with Booleans because they don't work. The ZBrush Booleans work great, but Maya Booleans not so much. Right, okay, so I've just moved those into position, and I've got to make the triangles on the rope down here. So what I'm going to do is, just like I've done before, right, so see how I've done it up here. Okay. Okay, so the distance down here is greater, so I'm getting to a point where I've got to make a decision. And my decision is I'm going to move this edge closer to the body, so I'm not having to make a weird sort of transition here like I've done down at the bottom. I'm going to bring these edges closer to the main rope so that I only have to make this shape here. So I'm going to it's just going to be a little bit weird to do. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the points I've just made, so these bits that I've just made on the main body, I'm going to use those to snap the vertex of this torus too. So like that. Turn off this constraint. There we go. So I'm going to snap, because because I can't see the actual thing. Right, I'm going to snap this vertex to this point here, like that, and then I'm going to go around and do that for every one of these. So snap, and for these edges that don't have a piece of rope, I'm just going to edge slide them in a little bit. I shouldn't really need to worry about that, but again, I'm a sucker for organisation and equalness and everything being nice and perfect. So I've just got to myself just do this. And again, you might be saying, Dave, I don't understand what you're doing. I'm basically just trying to, just like I've done up here, where I've cut out these squares so I can merge this model to this. I'm just doing the same thing down here. I've just got to move the geometry so I can make a triangle like this down here. A lot of this is down to practice as well. Just understanding and feeling the geometry and understanding what you can do or what you should do. Like that. Okay, cool. Right. And if I isolate this, I can then delete these edges. Because where I've made these little nooks is where the rope is going to be sitting. And if I isolate the main body, oops, X-ray, there we go, I'm going to be making this rope fit into this space here. You see what I mean? So now I can go around like I've done before and just start welding two pieces together. So I'm going to combine both these objects so they're under the same group. And then I'm just going to go around and combine. So I'm just grabbing two of the corresponding vertex. So the two vertex that are going to be sitting with each other. And just merging those again. Like I said before, G being the last tool you've just used, it being weld for me, I'm just going to go around and weld pieces together. This video in parts has already become kind of like a tutorial video. I want to avoid these videos being tutorial videos and more just me having a bit of fun modelling and talking you through it. So if you do have any questions about how I've done certain things, either drop me, if it's someone I don't teach, if it's just someone off the internet, drop me a comment, or if it is one of my students, just grab me in class or send me an email and I'll talk you through it. Because a lot of this is just understanding how to quickly do certain processes and understanding geometry where you can basically cheat geometry, where you can make geometry look like you've done tons of things, or you know, just smoke and mirrors. Like I've said before, it's all smoke and mirrors. So that is a lot of this model done already. So now this is what I was saying before. This is why I've cut it into a quarter. All you have to do is deal with that one section. I've not had to do all this jiggery pokery around the sides. I've just had to deal with this one section here. And now I can make sure that I have to put this manipulator in the middle of the world, so here. So if I D and X for snap to grid, I can snap it there. And then if I duplicate, so now I've made a duplicate here. I don't want to rotate it around, because if I rotate it around, you're going to notice that we're going to get this rope section that doesn't have the corresponding rope section. I'm going to, have I just deleted that? Yeah, I just deleted it. I'm going to basically flip it. I'm going to duplicate it and flip it against itself. So here I want to flip against the y-axis. So if I take, oh no, scale, sorry. Nope, I don't at all. I want to flip against the x-axis, sorry. So this side, I want to go over to the other side. So I'm following this red line here. So I'm going to go scale -1 in X, and there we go. And what's basically happening is, if you watch the scale, I'm scaling it in to 0 and then scaling it out in the minus. But in this case, I'm only doing it in the X. Is it going to do it? Yeah. So you can see there, if I do that again, just duplicate stuff. There we go. There you go. If I just grab this, so obviously all our scales there are 1. If I just start scaling in the x-axis, it's going to go to 0, to close to 0, so in, and then it's going to flip on itself like that. So I'm basically doing that manually like that, and then I can combine this object together and weld it. So now it's one solid object. Make sure that all my points are welded together. So I'm pressing 3 here. Now 3 will smooth the object out, but it's not for modeling in. Often this view will lie to you. I see a lot of people modeling in this view, and it doesn't really make any sense why you would, because this isn't how we will export our object for our engine. So that's just me checking that all the sections have been welded, because if it wasn't, if we had a section that wasn't welded together, it's very obvious that if this is what it's going to look like, and this is what this surface looks like, this isn't merged together, so we have to go in there and merge it together. Excuse me. And now I'm going to reset that to the middle of the world, and then I'm going to flip against the Z axis, so scale Z -1. There we go. Combine and merge, because combine will make it into one family, but it won't make it into a solid object. So then I've got to go in there and combine it, weld it. And so that is our lantern for the most part. And we can go in there, and I'm going to just make it a little bit more of it, because it's a perfect sphere essentially. So using the soft select, I'm going to maybe change the look a little bit, very, very subtly. Like that. So it's a little bit of a different shape. I can just do a little bit more. Yeah, just like that. So now that's a much more interesting shape for me. And I could do that because I've got all the main information done, that making any changes like that is super easy. Okay. So now I'm going to save, just in case I get another one of those little issues Maya gives us. That's number 2. And then I'm going to do the soften edge, and then I'm going to go around and harden all the edges I want to really bring out. Again, just like with the candlestick, it helps give a bit more of a more high-res appearance for a model. Even though it's the same res, still the same poly count, it helps just to give it a bit of definition. And all this information gets translated into the game engine as well. So if I sent an object into the scene, into like Unreal, and it was like that, then the light would react like this. It would give you very faceted edges. So I want to go around and I want to basically set up my object so it's nice and harder on the edges it needs to be hardened around, and softer on the edges it needs to be soft. So there, I've just picked off that area. So I'm going to go around and do these wide sections first, because the other section now, again I'm pressing G because the last tool I used was the harden edge. G for gamma. Oh, don't forget that section down there. There we go. What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying then. I was going to say something. So even if this wasn't for a project, this sort of stuff is really fun to do. I'm having quite a lot of fun doing this. Really simple objects that the more of these you do, the more you can create your own toy box. I call it a toy box. It's basically something you can jump into, and if you're trying to make a scene and it's a, you know, because because this is from Skyrim. So this is an object that's set in kind of like the human medieval world sort of theme. But if this is, you know, this could be a lantern from some deep tribal alien culture, and if you're trying to build a scene like that, you don't have to necessarily build everything, especially if, for the minor props. You can go in there, you can make a toy box, and you can just populate it with this. And it's also good to do this sort of stuff just to keep up with practice. There's a bee in the room. It is good just to keep these kind of practices up for yourself, especially if you want to do 3D modeling as a job. I will say that also, if you do just want to be he's a big bugger as well, the size of it. If you do want to be only a 2D guy or 2D girl, that's fine, I guess. Knowing 3D will help you though. It's knowing how to use the 3D softwares to help you with, maybe you're doing a big illustration scene, so you need to have lots of buildings or lots of kind of like, you need to get your composition perfect. One quick trick about doing that is using Maya or 3ds Max or 3D Coat or whatever software you want to use, and start making like basic compositional landscapes that you can take into your, either take a screenshot or, you know, take it into whatever you can start using. It's also, if you know 3D and if you know how to draw well and if you know how to model well, you are very, very attractive to studios, or you're very, very attractive to clients, because you're going to be a multiple skilled artist, which people want. People want that person who can do many different jobs. And it's something I kind of try and pride myself on doing, is being that person who can do the 2D and can do the 3D. Obviously, predominantly I'm 3D, and within that I am predominantly a character artist, but I love doing this sort of stuff, which is just fun to do. It also helps me, just like I said, just keep up with skills. If I've, for whatever reason, if I've not modelled for a while, which shouldn't be the case ever, I can come and do something simple like this and just, one, lose myself in the software again, and two, just, you know, shake the cobwebs off. And I am kind of waffling a bit now because I'm just doing all the kind of boring going around, make sure everything's hard edged, which it is. There we go. And down here as well. So yeah, this sort of work is the work that I would stick some music on, listen to a podcast, you know, whatever, and just kind of work through. Because the next thing I'm going to do after this is make the wooden top and wooden bottom, the loop at the top, and UV it, and then maybe, depending on how long the video is, or I might even do it in a separate video, just do the not the UVing for it, well, the texturing for it, take it into a Photoshop and make it look like it's all glowing. And this has taken me about an hour so far. Part of that was talking, part of that was me kind of having to restart the software, part of that was me kind of figuring out how to model this. Because what you don't see, what you don't see in a lot of videos online is the person thinking about how they're going to do something. They seem to just go in there and just know how to do something straight away, and that's the magic of editing. You know, every artist has to think, how am I going to do this? And one way about getting over that is just by doing it over and over and over and over and over again. That's looking okay. Good, 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 good. So, oh, I've got an edge there that I didn't mean to cut in. You can go away. Anything else? Nope. You can go away. So yeah, I'm just, now that I've noticed that, I'm just going around seeing if there is any other edges I didn't mean to have in there. So I don't think there is. I think that's it. So what I might be tempted to do is go in there and subdivide it one more time, just to make it a higher res model, maybe. But I might just leave it like this because it looks pretty cool. Okay, so I'm getting sidetracked. The top and the bottom, very, very easy. That's just a cylinder that's squashed. But it's a 12-sided one, so I'm actually going to make sure that it's 12-sided. Bring it up, bring it down. And because this is going to be a static mesh that's only ever going to kind of, maybe it's going to, if it's hung up, it's going to swing. I'm not going to have loose objects in there. I'm going to make everything a solid object. So I'm actually going to take away this bottom group of faces. And merge that into this top bit. So combine, there we go. So I'm actually going to do this from the inside so it's a bit easier. I'm just going to grab these, merge, well, snap them down there, and then go around and merge all these. So what I'm selecting here is the two vertex there that are basically the top meeting the rope section. So I'm going to go around and just merge all them. And again, one great thing about working low poly is that I can do all this and get the shape done first, and then if I need to subdivide it, which I might do, just to show you, I might do a subdivision version. So I can do all this first and then not have to worry about doing all this really annoying, tedious work later on. That's the top bit done, and if I wanted to, I could maybe bevel and cork the top a little bit so it looks a little bit more interesting. Could do the same thing at the bottom. So make a cylinder, make sure it's 12. It's like I keep saying, this work is just smoke and mirrors. We're trying to give the appearance that this object is super high definition. Oh, it's like a really complex object. Really, it's just a bunch of very simple shapes. A lot of this believability is done through texturing. Or even shaders. I mean, glass is quite a hard shader to set up for games. I mean, for films, but for games it's very easy because we just have like a transparent background, a transparent map, and then some specklerization just to give the appearance of a shiny surface. So I'm just going to start merging these. So I've got one of them, so I'm going to have to watch out for them at the bottom of here. I must have forgotten to actually clean them up before. So again, it's good to go around and before you've subdivided or anything, and just kind of make sure that everything's nice and fixed. There. So yeah, there's another one, get rid of you. So what might be cool as well is you might have a few different versions of these. Maybe these aren't even lights, maybe they're things you can collect. So obviously in the world of games, you've got the predominant colours of red, green, blue that you can use. Blue, obviously, you know, it's an iconic magic colour. So you could have maybe one of these that you have to smash to get some colour out of. Maybe this is a thing that you collect to get, you know, magic out of, or whatever. You know, you could have a real good fun with these. Maybe it is still a lantern, but you could colour the emissive map different colours to maybe light the scene, or to give the, a different feel to the scene. Okay, so far that's looking very cool. So now I'm going to make this sort of like metal, or I would say it's like a metal loop at the very top here. The way I'm going to do is not have this part of the geometry. I'm going to have this as floating geometry. Just because actually having something like this attached to this object isn't impossible by any means. It's just more work than I really want to go into. So this is kind of like a horseshoe shape, but the top of the shape here is half a torus. So I'm going to remake a torus, make it quite dense, quite thick, bring down the subdivision count a lot, and make sure it's got a halfway point like that. Maybe make it 12, and maybe bring down this section radius a little bit, like that. Cool. And in fact, that's maybe a little bit too many subdivisions going around. So I'm going to manually go around and delete every other subdivision. So it's a little bit squarer. That's better. Yeah. Rotate that round so it's nice and 90 degrees. There we go. And then start moving this into place. So it's like extruding down there. Do a little bit of shaping. Oh, it needs to be in the middle, obviously. There we go. Maybe bring it down a bit more. Oh, it looks pretty cool. That looks quite cool. Maybe I'm going to merge that through a tiny bit like that, just so I don't, if I'm doing any ambient occlusion passes, I'm not going to get too much of an issue there. And right, this rope. How am I going to do this rope? So let's go look at our reference. See if we can get any. So this looks like they've made, I forgot what the object's called, the shape's called, but it's a bit of it's a shape which comes round. If I can, here we go. It comes round underneath and then over the top and then connects. So it's like a continuous shape. I forgot what they're actually called. I'm not going to make one of those because I don't actually know how to make one of those. Oh, do I? Okay, so yeah, I did a little bit of a digging then, and I can't actually figure out. I can't find out what the name of this shape is, but I am familiar with the shape, and I'm not even going to try and create that shape because it's going to take me about a couple of hours just to figure out how to do it. So what I'm going to do instead is make a kind of a coiled rope using a helix, and a helix is this inside our create primitives, polygon primitives, down to a helix. And a helix is basically a coil, like this. So that's a very useful shape actually to have. And again, we can change all the different parameters on that. So how many coils does it have? How high is it? The width, the radius, subdivision axis, subdivision cap axis. Rounded caps, squared caps, depending on what you want to do. So what I'm going to do is just mess around with trying to get the right. I'm going to try and get like maybe 2 or 3 coils going around top of this, and then have the rope merge into itself. So I'm going to go quiet and try and figure that out for myself because I don't usually do shapes like this. So Oh, that looks alright already. Oh! There you go. Okay, so that looks alright. So I'm going to move that into position. Here I've got them at 90 degrees, it's nice and straight. So yeah, this is me kind of experimenting with something that I didn't actually foresee. So again, you know, that's not a bad thing, just experimenting. Maybe I might learn something new. That's looking pretty okay. Okey-doke, right. That's okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these two faces I've got selected here and merge them together. But that is going to be a little bit tricky because if I use a soft select, which I was just thinking about doing then, I'm going to be picking up the other pieces like this. But if I make it too small, or if I just turn the soft select off, then I'm just going to be doing this. So I'm actually going to do this and just make a bit of a mess at first and then go in and kind of fix it up later on. So I want these two to be facing each other. So, and I'm not going to directly face them, I'm just going to kind of just do a bit of a angle and then bring them in a bit. Like that maybe. Now, I've just had an idea. I'm going to delete these two rings of faces. And then when I've completed this shape, I'm going to bridge this shape I'm going to make up top back to this loop, but use a blend to it so it might kind of curve into it. Again, this is a bit of an experiment, so it might go wrong. So I'm going to delete both these corners, these faces, and then bridge. So using the bridge tool, bridge there, it creates a bunch of faces. I kind of hope this happened actually, so I can show you what to do. If you ever get this kind of shape happening where everything kind of is like collapsing in on itself, if you go to bridge offset and just start changing that, you're going to see that it actually starts to line up the more you kind of increase the number. I'm going to turn this curve type just a little bit so it goes to blend, and then I'm going to start adding divisions, and then I might have to do the curve offset again just to fix that. I might have to start doing this manually, in fact. So let's give it 3. Change that bridge offset. If I go to blend, is it going to freak out? Yeah, it's freaking out. So I'm going to manually blend these in, or bend them in, I should say. So a little bit of manual modeling there. Just gives the impression that these are blended in or bending in. Okay, now this is where I'm going to do that bridging with a blend trick again, and hopefully it works this time. So I'm going to bridge from here to here, like that. Change this curve type to blend. There we go. So yeah, that worked perfectly. Do the same thing here, 2 divisions and blend it. Oh. So this one's not working right. So I'm just going to have to manually do this one as well. It's a little bit annoying. There we go. So I'm just changing this direction source to positive, and then I've got my desired effect. Change a few things. Using that transform constraint again, just to slide that edge across, smoothing it out a little bit. There we go. That's looking okay. It's a bit of a weird shape. I could probably make that a bit better if I spent more time on it. But all in all, it's looking good. Yeah. So I'm actually going to just, because it's bugging me, I'm going to just transform constraint some of these edges around, so I'm not getting such a, and it looks a little bit weird from a distance. There we go. That's better. So that is a completed geometry. So it's not as perfect as, well, it's not as identical to this, because this is much more spherical, and I wanted to make a bit of a more interesting shape on mine. But that's basically my model done, aside from just smoothing the faces on some assets. And now it's time to unwrap. So I'm going to take a break and then grab another coffee and then come back and unwrap this. So in a second. Right then, so now it's time to unwrap this. So I'm going to save this because I've realised I've not saved in a little bit. Naughty me. Oh, cancel that. So it's not the 34th save. Yeah, there we go. Right, so I'm going to unwrap this, and I'm going to unwrap this in sections. So I'm going to unwrap all the parts I want to be emissive. It's all going to be inside the same texture sheet. I'm just not going to kind of unfold everything at once. I'm going to grab certain sections and unfold those individually. So first things first is all the sections I want to be emissive, which are these kind of flat sections. So going around selecting them by face. So this might take a little bit of time. And again, I'm trying to be as careful as I can when I'm selecting these. Let's see how well this works. Is that selecting anything I don't want to? No, it's fine. So I can use paint select carefully just to grab certain things. Oh, you can see there I've not been careful enough and I've accidentally selected something. Oh, I've got another one of there. It's okay. If I project something I don't want to project, it'll be reprojected anyway eventually. So I'm not super bothered about selecting the wrong things. But you still want to be as clean and as careful as possible. Cool. So how I'm going to do this is Let's try a spherical unwrap first. Okay, so that worked pretty good. So I did a spherical unwrap, which if I do it again, you can see that we've got our little virtual camera that's been set up, and it's gone around and it's actually done a really good job of grabbing these flat sections there. So these are all my different panels, and I'm just going to turn on my checkerboard. So again, I'm using the old-fashioned UV editor here. So I'm thinking whether or not I should actually, yes, okay. So I'll take this into 2018 just so I can use that UV editor instead. So give it a second to bounce this up. Right, so we're in. Oh, it's not grabbed everything. Okay, so make sure. I'm just going to combine everything under one group because that's a clever thing to do, and then take it back into 18 because that was, I just did a silly. There we go. Cool. So now I can split it up. There we go. So everything's separate faces now. Cool. So yes, I am in 2018, but I'm just using this to do the UV unwrapping because it's got the new UV unwrapping editor. So I'm going to have to reselect all these flat faces again because it's messed up. Because this is what happens when you take stuff from 17 to 18. A lot of times your UV unwrapping can mess up. And I hate it. I really hate it. So what I'm going to try and do is, at least for now, just move. No, that's not going to work. So yeah, I'm actually going to have to go back and reselect everything, which is going to be annoying. So I've already got two selected there. Quite often, taking an OBJ into another engine or another editor won't mess it up because an OBJ is a naked file format which is usable across all different platforms. But because I did a straight copy paste from a 17 to an 18, it really didn't like that. It really did not like the fact that I did that. So I'm going to have to just reproject this loop section again. Hopefully it does the outcome I had before, which it has. Yay! So that's my looping sections. Let's turn on our thingy so you can see there that they're okay. I'm going to, oh, my tool setting has gone away. There we go. So stop that. Right, so let's just do a unfold on these to see what happens, see how they actually fix that. So that is looking perfect. So that's all my sections unfolded, and you can see here, so I've just gone into unfold, clicked unfold, and it's done it absolutely perfectly. There's there's very little janky surface. There's very no janky surface at all. So, and so what I'm also going to do is I'm going to keep a line. So this whole section, I'm going to keep like on top of each other like this. So when I'm texturing, it's easier to have the texture carry on, especially if you've got like something that's very obvious. If you didn't have it carrying on, it'd be very, very obvious. Just like when we did the planks with the barrels, it's best to keep the like one whole strip of plank, even if it might be broken up inside the UV. Try and keep that as one whole strip all together. It's easier to texture later on. Makes it more believable. So, move this aside a little bit. Now, one thing I could do with this, which I'm probably not going to do, but if you were in a game engine or if you were having this like a really like low priority asset, is I might lie some of these on top of each other, so that I might only have like 3 different faces, so for like different textures. But for this, because I want to make a point of UV in, I'm going to keep all these separate faces. So all these are completely separate. Nothing's lying over top of each other, which will help me a lot if I'm doing any light baking in Maya. These will all have to be separate, so the light information is only using singular faces. There's no overlapping faces, which might mess up. So now it's time to do the. I can do the top and the bottom very quickly. I can just select both of them. Oh, let's do a bit more cleverly. And I can do a projection like that just to kick them off, and I'll move them out of the way for now. And then I can do I'll do one of these ropes. Now I'm going to have to go through and make sure I've got everything selected. Underneath, which is always fun. Now at the very bottom here, I can't do that quick, like what I'm doing here, the quick selection, because that's going to end up selecting all the rope going down as well. So I'm just going to have to click individually. Oops, messed that one. So this is why you gotta be careful about clicking, because I'm just rushing, consciously rushing at the minute, which is not good. There we go. So I'll do a cylindrical unwrap on this as well, like that. And then what I'm going to do is use the unfold along. So I'm going to see about unfold along V, and that seems to have done the trick. And then just see what unfold along the U does. Check out my checkerboard. That's looking very nice, actually. So I'm actually going to leave that as it is. So I've just used it unfold, because sometimes unfold will give you like the bendy shapes, and because I'm very conscious about how much space I'm taking up as well, if I can get something looking like a good unwrap and the UVs are nice and straight, and I'm happy. So I'm going to put that over there. I'm not so fussed about scaling as well at the minute. I can try and get that the same if I want to, but I'm not totally fussed just right now. Next is another rope, so I'll do the bottom rope here. So this one's going to be easy to do until I get to the top where I've got some weird geometry going on. And then go around. So this is kind of getting inside those crevices, trying to get all this geometry. Okay, cool. So then do another cylindrical unwrap on that. Oops, I've accidentally still got my upper section selected, so I'm going to deselect all that. Okay, I don't want that selected. And do that. So then I can do the along UV. There we go. So let's move that around. I'll keep my rope sections together, because that means that inside, when I'm packing everything together, I can keep them all together, and all my rope sections together, all my wooden sections together. Makes it a little bit easier, cleaner when I'm unwrapping. So again, it's a bit finicky, but I've got to make sure I get all these little sections, which in this might be a little bit annoying. There we go. So again, make sure I've only got that selected. Yes. Cylindrical unwrap. UV, move that to the side. There we go. My lid's already been done, so what's left? What's all this here? Oh, my strips here. So these should only actually be my little strip sections going down, which I believe they are. They are, which is super cool, because what I can probably do on these is the exact same thing I've done on the sections that would be lit, is just do cylindrical unwrap and boom, everything's there. What are these sections here? Oh, I forgot to do something. So I forgot to do the very interior at the top of this upper rope section. So what I can do is go around, select all these UVs here in face mode, and then reselect the big UV it's associated with this, and then reproject this section. So there we go. There we go. Someone's just dropped something outside, it sounds like. Okay. Start dropping stuff. Okay, so I've got all these different bits here. And they're all a little bit bendy. I want these to be as straight as possible, because obviously I'm using this projection, which is going to project it with a little bit of a slight curve. So I'm going to see what this straight and along UV does. So straight and along UVs, both of them selected. Perfect. Well, not entirely perfect. There's still a little bit of cleanup I need to do, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. You can see these little strips on the side. These are actually these are sections that are being slightly hidden. So what I can do is there we go. So unfold along again. So you've got unfold along V does. So I'm just experimenting with these tools now. Okay, so I'm exposing those edges, then I can oops. This isn't actually working how I wanted it to. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of jiggery pokery with this geometry, because the tall sections are working fine, except that bit. If I can get these nice and straight along the side, then the smaller sections I'm going to have to do something else with. Now these two end sections are actually the same piece, so this piece here and this piece here are actually the same section, it's just because it's been split apart. So what I can do is just merge these two together down the middle. So moving so. Bring my settings back a little bit. So there you go, so now it's over here, and I can go along and string UV. Cool. Now for this upper section, I've got to think of a way I can do this. Because every time I straighten UVs, it goes back to normal. That's not working. So, well, I'll just do unfold along U. So I'm getting sort of like a bit of a shield shape. And then I can manually straighten that out. I can use the align tool to align those to how I want them. So I know that I want everything to align, because it's a continuous shape going all the way down. I can use this shape here to align all the UVs to. So I know that all these should be aligned to the far right and all these to the far left. And then, oops, there we go. Align to that one. These should be aligned to that one. Thank you. So them should be aligned to the left. Well, these should be aligned to here. There you go. And I can straighten them out in a second. I'm just going to align them all. So I want all these edges here that are a bit curved to align to this one. So I can align to the left and then align to the right. So, like I've said in class, UVing is something where you can stick on your music, stick on a podcast, and just take it slow, take it easy, don't rush, and then just. It's pretty easy. It's just a bit time consuming. So it's all, especially when you got objects like these, it's all very like repeated functions. Over and over again, the same thing over and over again. Until you're done. But it doesn't take too long, it's just a bit boring. It takes about 5 minutes if that. Then the outcome speaks for itself. So, and UVing is something that you can't just skimp on. You've got to have correct UVs in your model, especially if you're taking it into Photoshop or Substance Painter or anywhere. Because a misconception with people who are new to modeling and they've seen Substance Painter and stuff is that you can just take a model without UVs into Substance Painter and then it'll fix it, which it doesn't. All you're basically doing is using Substance Painter as a colouring book. And if you've not got your lines there in your colouring book, then your model or your UVs aren't going to work. It's not going to exist. So see how that works. So we're getting them pretty straight. So down here we need to straighten them up, and up here we need to straighten them up, which is fine. So if I'm going to keep an eye on my geometry here. You can see here it's been all warped, and I'm going to just select all these bottom sections here, and I'm going to align those and then align the ones above it. Okay. Okay, so yeah, they're not absolutely perfect. So make them as square as possible. Okay, like that. And the same things for the ones down here. I'm just going to start aligning these so they're all matching. Okay. So again, they're not absolutely perfect, but well, if I can try and get these looking a bit better. Yeah. Looks a little bit better. Okay. So yeah, I could spend probably a few hours on there just trying to, or well, not a few hours, but a while, just making those look a little bit nicer. But as a minor asset in a game scene, again, like I was saying, you don't want to spend too long on it. Okay, so bring them all close together. So that's everything individually unwrapped. Let's turn off my checkerboard. Oh, I still need to do these. So these are my lids. And I can actually do these a couple of different ways. What I'm going to do is separate off the flat bit at the top and the bottom. And just project those again so they're separated. And then I've got the exterior sides. So I've got them. I'm going to do a cylindrical unwrap on these, and then use the unfold along. So I'm exposing the edges. Oh, just got an email through. And then what I can do is I can texture these so that it looks like it's been cut from either a lot of cork, which will have kind of like a grain across the side, or a lot of wood. So again, that will also have a grain across the side. There we go. Straighten them out. So, boom. Keep them together. Cool. And then my lids. Flip that one. So now it's time just to check if everything's looking okay. Which it is. Obviously these two can be way smaller. Yeah. And now it's time just to try and fit it into a texture sheet. So just like I've done in the last candlestick, I'm going to use this area here, these 4 squares, lay them all inside here, and then make them fit inside this area, just so I can use this visual cross section just to help me lay stuff in. So bring everything in. Okay, so this should be pretty easy, in fact. Oh, I've just noticed something. These are not aligned together. There we go. Now I'm going to scale. I'm going to try and get the same scale of these little bits of rope to these sections, because they're basically going to be the same size. Just to make sure I might be wrong on that one. If I change the guy, no, I'm pretty much, yeah, so that's right. So I'm still trying to maintain everything being the same height with the UVs, with the checkerboard. Which, this is actually quite a nice little UV setup, as in fits in nice and cleanly. Oop. Oh, you know what I've not done? I've not done the handle and the rope. So everything's looking pretty much the same there. I'm happy enough with that. Now to do the handle and the rope. Now the handle and the rope, super easy. Well, the handle is anyway, because I can do a projection from the side. And if I actually, well, what I want to do, just to make it really easy on myself, I'll put another seam across the top, like that, and another seam across the bottom, like that, so I can split it up, and I can actually kind of jigsaw these in together. So I'm going to select this, do a planar UV going from the Z-axis, so I'm looking at this from the front, like that. Oh, make sure I've got, oh I have, oh never mind. Always make sure you got keep image width height ratio selected. So I'll cut them along these seams like that. Flip the red one, because when I unfold it, it will work properly. No, flip that. Flip. There we go. And then I can just do an unfold. Both of these. Right. I could probably make these UVs flat, so that these are just going to be strips as well. That might be a lot easier than what I'm thinking. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is probably going to be the most in-depth UVing I'm going to be doing with this. So I'm going to flatten these out so they are actually strips. Oops. There we go. So I'm just going to flatten them out like this first, and then align everything. Oops. Like that. Check my thing. It's looking okay. Okay, so when I've done that, I've got this template. I can basically use the exact. I can do the exact same one. Or am I feeling cheeky enough? What I could do is just completely delete this side. Have I done a duplicate on that? It's weird. It seemed I had like a bit of a funky geometry going on there. I don't know how that's been done. Okay, back to my UV editor. Okay, so this has been laid out flat, and what I can do is I can duplicate this, not save it, duplicate this, and then use that flipping trick I did before. So I want to flip it across the z-axis. So scale -1. Make sure numlock turned on. So I'm making sure, because I've put this in the very center of the object, which aligns to the center of the world. So when I flip this, it's going to flip onto itself, and then that duplicates the UVs. So now I've got both sets of the UVs done, and I'm going to cut and sew these. Well, I'm going to sew these across this edge here, so there's going to be no seam line across the very top. And if I can avoid it, there's going to be no seam line across the interior here. But if there is, it's going to be in a place where you're not going to see it. So find these edges. Something going on underneath. Let me just isolate this. Looks like these. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to have to combine and merge these first. There we go. Right, so flip this one. Flip. There we go. And now I can sew along this exterior line. So then it becomes one object. When I texture this, this is going to be the inside seam here, where I'm not going to see anything, and this is going to be the exterior seam, where, well, there is no seam, so you're not going to see any seam lines. I'll bring everything back. There we go. See, these are the simple mistakes that you still make even after years of doing it. You still kind of forget certain things. You have to go back and just fix. It's not so bad. So now it's this horrible thing that I was kind of dreading doing. What I'm going to do is just fix the geometry a little bit using soft select. Let's bring it down there. Bring it down there. Like that, yeah. Just so it fits the form a little bit nicer. Cool. So there is one way I could probably do this. And it's going to be a little bit funky to do. And this is something that I'll probably go over. Well, I will go over inside the organic texturing section of the year. And I'm basically going to make all these different faces sit over the top of each other, and then I'm going to lay them out in one big straight line. And because unwrapping something like this is really difficult because it's a continuous shape. Where am I? There we go. It's a continuous shape, so there's no real area I can cut along. So I'm going to do a save because this bit's going to be a little bit annoying to do. It would be a lot easier to do in the old. Oh, I'm in 18 now, so I've got to be a bit careful about this now because I'm in 18 while I'm unwrapping it. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something again. I'm going to export this as an OBJ, and then for this section, I'm going to take this back into Maya 17 to do this section because I want to get this right, and I don't want to be messing around with the new UV tools. And I'll figure out a way of doing it inside the new Maya off camera. So I'm going to export this as a OBJ. So first, I'm going to delete all the history. I'm going to name my object, so this is not. This is body, and this is. There we go. So I'm going to grab these. I'm going to export them. Export selection OBJ. Take that into my scene, or into my scene folder. So rope lanterns, scene. Lantern OBJ just standing for object. So go back into 17. There we go, and I'll just put this in a different layer. Right, so I'm going to speed that part of the video up because it was long and it was annoying and it had me kind of like R&D in how to unwrap an object like that, which is really annoying. I'm a bit annoyed about that, but I've got everything laid out now, ready to be taken into a Photoshop file. So one thing, I mentioned this in the last kind of video. This can go away now. Oh, come on. There we go. I mentioned this in the last video. In situations, you'll have like a generic texture that can be applied to many different things. So on one object, you might have like 4 different materials that are just basically calling different overlying materials. So you'll have like a wood material, you'll have a glowing material, you'll have a metal material. So you won't necessarily have textures set up like this, where everything's got its own little place. You'd have all the metal sections would just be sat over the top of each other, and all the wooden sections will just be sat over the top of each other, so that you can pull a lot of the same material. What I'm doing here is again just trying to use that bespoke texture and trying to get used to texturing inside a space. Or like, if what I would advise to you is try and get used to actual unwrapping. I should say not texturing, unwrapping. And getting used to lay stuff out, because when you come to games like Oblivion, not Oblivion, well, yeah, Oblivion, Destiny, the new Ghost Recon, Wildlands, a lot of the textures on there that aren't characters are just going to be big square textures that you'll have a load of UVs just sitting on top of each other. Because there's many different, they're calling all these different materials, which is fine, which is, that's how you do it. But when you're learning, I think it's very important to get used to unwrapping stuff, and making sure you understand the whole process of unwrapping, the whole meaning, the reason behind why we unwrap stuff. And not just relying on doing something like this to unwrap and just leaving this, because this sort of unwrap here that I've just done is an automatic unwrap, and just because it says an automatic unwrap doesn't mean it's gonna unwrap stuff properly for you, because it's just a lot of wasted space, it's a lot of weird shapes, and it's bad. So going around unwrapping stuff, make sure it's laid out properly, that's what we want to do. And remember that the size of these squares doesn't relate to how dense the pixels are going to be. This is just a representation of scale. So I can take this out as a 1:6 texture, 1:8 texture, or even like a 4K texture. I'll probably do this as a 1024 or even a 2K texture, because this is going to be like a beauty piece anyway. So maybe the texture is going to be very nice to it. The last thing I'm going to show you, because this is going to be a long video, the last thing I'm going to show you now is taking something like this and making it more high resolution, but still maintaining these sharp edges. And this is another long process that I'm going to do, as I say, because every so often it can throw up a little bit of an issue as well. Maya can not like it, so I'm going to save this number 4. There we go. So I'm going to use something called the crease tool that I probably actually showed you. I think I showed you in the candlestick video actually. And if I press 3, I get the approximation of what my object is going to look like when I subdivide it. Just the approximation. But I lose, as you can see here, I lose a lot of them hard edges and stuff gets a little bit soft, and I don't want that. So if I want to subdivide this and I want to maintain these very hard edges, I've got to crease those edges. So in this case, with like the point where the lid meets the body, I'm going to go to Mesh Tool, make sure I've got that edge selected, Mesh Tool, Crease, and then it gives me this direction, select components to crease and drag the middle mouse button to edit crease. You can see there I now sharpen that edge. I can do that across this beveled edge here, oops, daisy, like that. I can go around and just select all these things I want to have nice and creased and crease them. So again, this might take a little bit of time, but the outcome is nice. This may mean that you might have to reproject the entire model again and re-unwrap it, or it might not, depending on how it affects the UVs. So I'm going to speed up the video now and just do all this creasing and then subdivide it and then show you the outcome of that. So that is what subdividing it will give you, and you have to go around. You'd have to do a little bit more work to it to get back some of those hard edges. It's not too bad. I'd probably do this before I do the UVing, because there's some sections it gives you, well, it affects the UVs or it affects the geometry in ways I'd want to clean this up before I UV it. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with my low poly version, do a texture on that, a nice texture on that, and have fun with it. So I'm going to actually end the video now, and then I might do a video about just doing the emissive map and then maybe taking it into either Unreal or Unity, and then just getting that that kind of like that lighting effect working inside the engine. So this is the video done. It's a very long video, I'm sorry, but cool.